My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 28 years old, and the first time I saw the deer walking on two legs, I honestly thought it was some drunk guy in a cheap hunting costume screwing around at the edge of the tree line. I was on my way to the night shift at the county wildlife monitoring station, hoodie up against the October wind, steel-toe boots crunching gravel, thinking more about coffee than cryptids. That's how it always starts, right? Some guy in a black hoodie and dark jeans, minding his own business until the world quietly stops making sense. My job isn't glamorous, but it's practical. I'm the overnight tech and security for the Timberline Wildlife Observation Hub, which is a fancy way of saying I sit in a concrete box on the edge of the forest and make sure the cameras don't die and nobody sneaks in to mess with the equipment. Black hoodie with a faded security logo, dark jeans starting to shine at the knees, boots scuffed from years of late-night patrols. This is my uniform, not because anyone makes me wear it, but because routine is the only thing that keeps your head straight when the radios go quiet and the trees start sounding like they're breathing. That evening the sky was a flat slab of dirty gray, soaking the forest in dull light, and the tree line across from the parking lot looked like a row of sharpened teeth pressed together, waiting for something stupid enough to walk between them. I locked my old pickup, slung my backpack over one shoulder, and that's when I saw the deer standing beside the far fence, motionless, watching me. At first glance it was just a big buck, impressive rack, winter coat already thickening, but something about the angle of its body was wrong, like it was balanced on the tips of its hooves instead of resting on all four. Then it straightened, vertebrae unrolling in a slow ripple, and I realized with a cold, stupid certainty that it was rising, not rearing, its spine stacking upright the way a man stands up from a crouch. The deer stood there on two legs like it had always known how, forelegs hanging at its sides like useless arms, head tilted slightly as if listening to a song only it could hear. My brain immediately tried to fix it, to convince me I was seeing shadows or a trick of perspective, but the thing pivoted with this slow, deliberate motion, hooves turning in the gravel without losing balance, and every rational explanation I had just evaporated. It didn't run, didn't bolt, didn't snort and stomp like a normal spooked animal. It just turned its head fully toward me, eyes catching the weak parking lot light so they flashed a pale, milky gold, and I felt this hot, stupid wave of embarrassment because looking at it felt exactly like catching a stranger staring far too long. I glanced up at the station windows, half expecting one of the other guys to be laughing, filming some elaborate prank on a phone, but the glass was dark and the building looked abandoned, just a squat block of concrete half-eaten by trees. When I looked back, the deer had taken 3 silent steps closer, still upright, still balanced, its legs too long now, joints flexing backward just a little too far, like someone had built it from memory and gotten the angles wrong. I don't know how long we stood there, me halfway between my truck and the station door, it halfway between the woods and the fence, like two idiots caught in a staring contest nobody had agreed to start. What finally broke it wasn't courage, or curiosity, or even common sense trying to drag me inside, but the sharp, shrill tone of my phone going off in my pocket with that specific vibrating buzz that means it isn't just a text or a spam call, it's the emergency alert system. I jumped, fumbled the phone out, eyes flicking between the screen and the deer, which hadn't moved at all, and saw a red banner I'd never seen before stretching across the display. NOAA didn't send it, not the state, not the county. The header just said National Interface Alert, which meant nothing, and beneath that in block letters, Localized Wildlife Anomaly Protocol active for Timberline Region. Text started populating underneath, line by line like someone was typing at live. Rule 1. If you observe CERVIDS exhibiting bipedal locomotion, do not approach. Rule 2. Do not follow any such animal into wooded areas, regardless of appearance or behavior. Rule 3. If the animal attempts to mimic human gestures or speech, do not engage. Seek secure shelter and await further instructions. My thumb hovered over the screen as if I could scroll for more, as if there might be some ordinary explanation tagged on at the bottom. Wildlife study, glitch, hoax. But the text just sat there, pulsing gently, while out by the fence the deer took another impossibly slow, perfectly balanced step toward me. The rational part of me tried to catalog everything like data. Height just over my shoulder even on four legs. Antlers asymmetrical, right ear torn. No visible collar or tag. Gait slow but controlled. Because that's what you do when your whole nervous system is screaming that something is wrong and you're too stubborn to run. The irrational part was whispering that I'd been working too many nights alone, that somebody was probably filming this from the woods, that any second a cheap Halloween mask would come off, and some idiot would yell that I was on a hidden camera show. Except there was no mask, no zipper down the front of that stretched, tawny hide, no seam where a person could have climbed inside the animal. It was just meat and bone rearranged into something that had no business standing upright in my parking lot. The air felt wrong, too charged and thin, like the minute before a lightning strike. And behind the deer, deeper in the trees, I thought I could see other shapes shifting in the shadows, tall and narrow and patient, as if they were waiting to see what I would do with the first one. Inside the station, through the glass door, I could see the monitor wall flickering with forest feeds, all washed in sickly green. And for a split second every camera glitched at once, the image collapsing into vertical lines before resolving into one view, the clearing outside, seen from above, with me walking toward the upright deer alone, slowly. I should have run the second the emergency alert hit my phone, but instead I found myself rooted to the gravel, staring at that deer. No, that thing, standing upright like it was wearing a deer's body as a disguise it hadn't fully grown into yet, its long forelegs dangling like loose sleeves on a too big coat, its head cocked with an intentness that felt almost human, almost curious, almost hungry. The air around the tree line had gone unnaturally still, like the forest itself was holding its breath, and the shapes I'd glimpsed earlier were definite now, other deer, or things wearing deer, tall silhouettes with crooked necks and antlers branching wrong, standing between the pines like paper cutouts stuck to the dark. My radio crackled at my hip, sudden and violent, like something clawing its way into the frequency instead of transmitting through it. Unit 9, status check. A voice snapped, but it wasn't dispatch. It was too distorted, too low, like it was coming through a throat that didn't know how to imitate speech correctly. I yanked the radio off my belt, thumb hovering over the talk button, when every monitor in the station behind me flashed a warning red at the same instant, as if synced to something I couldn't see. The upright deer took another step toward me, smooth as a puppeteer's pull, no wobble, no sway, just a perfect glide like its hooves never fully touched the ground. My instincts finally kicked in, shoving me backward until my shoulders slammed into the metal door of the station. I swiped my access card, practically tore the handle off and fell inside, slamming the door shut and locking the deadbolt even though it was just glass between me and whatever nightmare evolution was happening out there. The room lit up with alerts cascading across the monitors, motion detection spikes on every northern camera, temperature shifts that made no sense, audio signatures marked as unknown BIOFORM. My heartbeat thundered as I pulled up the parking lot feed, expecting emptiness, expecting maybe a normal deer, expecting sanity. Instead, the creature stood inches from the glass, perfectly upright, face tilted toward the camera, eyes a pale reflective gold that didn't blink as it slowly lifted one hoof, one cloven, trembling hoof, and tapped it against the lens. Once, twice, then a third time slower as if knocking. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I'd lose consciousness. The knock wasn't random, not animal instinct, not aggression. It was rhythmic, intentional, like it wanted me to open the door. I muted the feed, hands shaking, and switched to thermal imaging. The creature appeared as a muddled heat signature, too cold around the limbs, too warm at the core, like its insides were running hotter than any mammal should. Whatever intelligence it lacked in form, it made up for in focus. It lifted its head again, turned slightly, and its ear twitched toward the building, toward me. The radio crackled again. This time with a voice I recognized. Holcomb, my supervisor. Webb, don't follow it. Static tore the frequency apart. Do not repeat, do not follow the. His voice cut off in a wet screech that didn't sound like radio interference but like something dragging metal along bone. Then the line went silent. My pulse hammered in my ears. Holcomb wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this district tonight. The creature outside pressed its face closer to the glass. Its nostrils flexed, inhaling deeply, its eyes widening a fraction as if it had caught a scent it recognized. My scent. And then the thing did something that nearly made me scream. It lifted one foreleg, the joint rotating too far, bending wrong, and placed the edge of its hoof against its own throat. Slowly, shakily, it dragged the hoof downward in a slanted line like a gesture. A crude imitation of a human drawing a line across its neck, as if trying to show me something, as if warning me, or threatening, or both. The lights flickered overhead, the generator kicking on even though we weren't supposed to lose power this close to town. A loud metallic bang rang from the far hallway, the storage bay. Something had hit the back door, hard. I switched to the rear exterior camera and felt my breath vanish. Another one of the creatures stood there, upright, taller than the first. No antlers, just a long, narrow head that bulged wrong at the jaw, like something bigger than bone was trying to push outward from inside. Behind it, drifting between the trees, more shapes shifted in the dark, 6, maybe 7 forms moving in slow, wide arcs around the building, each one swaying like their weight distribution didn't match their bodies. They were surrounding the station, herding me inside like prey. My phone buzzed again. Another emergency alert. Emergency alert. Timberline region has entered quarantine phase. Rule 4. Do not respond to any human-like sounds emitted by cervid FORMS. Rule 5. Do not exit your shelter if deer-like entities are observed walking on 2 legs. Rule 6. If you have been observed by the entity, remain indoors. That last line made my blood feel like ice water. I had been observed, stalked, targeted. A new sound rose outside, soft at first, then louder. Not a growl, not a snort. Laughter. High, breathy laughter in a man's voice, my voice echoing from just beyond the glass door. My knees nearly buckled. The creature didn't have lips shaped for speech, but something in its throat stretched, cracked, reshaped, allowing it to force out a sound that did not belong to it. My laugh. My exact cadence. It pressed its hoof against the door handle, testing it. A metallic groan shuddered from the back of the station, the second creature slamming into the steel door again. Wood cracked somewhere in the roof as the thermal sensors lit up with long, thin signatures crawling across the structure, like they'd learned to climb. This was no random anomaly, no mutation, no accident. They were coordinated, intelligent, and I was the only living thing inside the station. A sudden movement in the parking lot feed froze me. A third creature stepped into view, this one missing most of its lower jaw, tongue dangling like a strip of dark cloth, its long legs bending as it walked with jerky, puppet-like motions that somehow still carried purpose. It lifted its head as if scenting the air, and then from deep in its mangled throat came a gurgling attempt at speech. Ma-ku, Marcus. My name, choked out like a secret, like a lure. Something slammed against the roof hard enough to send dust raining from the ceiling tiles. My phone continued vibrating with alerts, unreadable text, corrupted symbols, warnings that flickered too fast to process. I stumbled backward until my spine hit the equipment rack, heart rattling in my chest, sweat freezing across my skin despite the heat in the room. The creatures closed in around the station, tall, thin, walking wrong, bending wrong, teeth clicking in anticipation. And for the first time since arriving, I realized the government didn't issue those alerts to protect people from the deer. The alerts existed to protect the deer from being seen. The things outside weren't animals, and they weren't hunting food. They were hunting patterns, shapes, voices, me. One of them scraped its hoof slowly down the glass, leaving a long, pale streak, and the thing leaned so close its eye filled the entire camera feed, wide, bright, and horribly aware. Then all at once, every exterior camera glitched to static, the lights cut out completely, and the radio hissed with one last broken transmission. Webb, they're inside. The moment the cameras died and the station dropped into blind darkness, Every instinct in me screamed to keep moving. Irregular steps, no repetition, no patterns the creatures could mimic. But the room felt like it had shrunk, the air thickening as something pressed against the walls from the outside, probing for weak points. Bishop wasn't here to anchor anything this time. I was alone, the only heartbeat in a building surrounded by entities that had already learned my voice, my movements, my breathing rhythms. I fumbled in the dark until my hands found the backup generator switch, palms slick with sweat, breath too loud in my ears. The generator sputtered, caught, and the monitors flickered to life one by one. But instead of camera feeds, a single document flashed across all screens. Federal Wildlife Control, Restricted Level Omega Project Hollowheart. My stomach twisted. I'd never heard of Project Hollowheart, but the logo in the corner, a stylized deer skull split vertically, was the same emblem printed on the redacted folders my supervisor Holcomb kept locked in his filing cabinet. I clicked the first file. The screen filled with a blurred photograph of what looked like a dissected deer, but the anatomy was wrong. The rib cage was too flexible, cartilage-like. The joints showed double articulation. The skull's interior cavity was hollow, stretching far deeper than a cervid cranium should allow. Notes along the side read, "Subject does not possess normal organ structure. Internal space and when Euclidean. Imitation of deer form is superficial only." Beneath that, in bright red, "Expansion phase triggered by human observation and pattern recognition. Do not allow sustained eye contact." My heart pounded as I skimmed page after page. Another document showed a forest ranger standing beside a buck, except the buck towered over him, upright, limbs elongated, head drooping like the neck couldn't support its weight. The ranger's face was blurred. The deer's was not. Its eyes looked exactly like the creature outside my door. Another file contained a transcript. Audio log 4B, field team lost pine 0013. Subject attempted vocal mimicry again. Human male voice, approximate age 30-40. 0019. It is learning faster than predicted. Attempted full sentence formation. 0033. Do not engage. Do not look when it end of recording device destroyed. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. These things weren't deer evolving into something else. They were something else imitating deer, practicing, improving, refining themselves through observation. And every time I watched them through the cameras, every time I studied their movements, I had been teaching them. The next document opened automatically. Incident Report 12, Survivor Interview. A single line stood out in bold, jagged font. They walk like US before they learn to sound like US, and they sound like US before they learn to open doors. At that exact second, as if on cue, the metal handle on the glass front door rattled gently, not violently, not like something trying to break in, like something testing, learning. I staggered back from the monitors, pulse jackhammering in my throat. The handle twisted again, then stopped. The radio behind me hissed, crackled, then spoke in a perfect imitation of my own voice. "Marcus, don't be scared. Open the door." The temperature in the room dropped so fast my breath fogged in the glow of the monitors. The creatures were triangulating the building again, footsteps creaking on the roof, something scraping down the side paneling, a long, slow drag like an antler or claw tracing metal. I opened the next Hollowheart document with shaking fingers. This one showed a topographical map, our forest, a glowing red ring surrounding it. Holcomb had called it a wildlife anomaly, but the documents used a different term entirely: spatial breach zone, hostile mimetic entity class, perception seed. My eyes raced across the technical notes. Key traits: mimics local fauna first. Adapts form based on observed hosts. Responds to repeated patterns, especially motion and sound. Learns individual identities of repeated observers. Attempts to lure target into high-density forest where full manifestation is possible. Another line was highlighted: do not follow any bipedal cervid into forested areas. Lure phase guaranteed. Then at the bottom, a handwritten note, Holcomb's handwriting. "Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm sorry." My throat constricted. Holcomb had known these things for months, maybe years, and never said a word. He'd been part of the cover-up, the monitoring, the silencing. And now he was gone because something had found him first. A loud crash ripped through the building as something heavy landed on the roof, shaking dust loose from the rafters. The cameras, still dead, flickered once, then came back online briefly, but instead of showing the forest, every screen displayed the same image: my driveway at home, my own truck parked outside, my porch light flickering. Something tall standing beside my trash cans, partly hidden in shadow but upright, very upright, watching the front door of my house. My house 3 towns away. Impossible. Unless the things weren't bound to the forest anymore. Unless they'd been following me long before tonight. Unless they knew exactly where I lived. The feed cut out, replaced by blistering white static. Then the emergency alerts hit again, not the standard tone but a low, rumbling vibration that rattled the windows. The message was short and far too late. Emergency alert. Project Hollowheart has breached containment. All field operatives presumed lost. Do not engage, do not follow, do not run. THEY track patterns. Remain still. My breath caught remain still. That contradicted everything I'd read, everything the anomaly responded to, everything I'd survived by doing. The alerts were corrupted, or worse, imitated. Another line populated beneath it. MARCUS opened the door. Just text. No header, no agency, just my name. My phone vibrated again, this time with a call, unknown number. Against every instinct I answered because terror makes people stupid. A voice, my supervisor's voice, whispered through the speaker. Webb, don't trust the system, the alerts, they're in the network. Holcomb. They use the alerts now, Marcus. They learned them. They learned how to. His voice glitched, fractured, then changed mid-sentence into my own voice. Marcus, open the door. I hurled the phone across the room. A new sound rose outside, branches snapping under enormous weight, hooves crunching gravel, clicks and wet pops from shifting joints. And suddenly the front door glass fogged over where something exhaled against it. Slowly, impossibly slowly, a long shadow stretched across the frosted glass antlers. Too many times, bending wrong, twisting like fingers. The silhouette leaned closer. And then, in a wet, bubbling approximation of my own voice, it whispered, "Come with us." We learned your walk. The roof creaked again, the back door shook, the vents trembled. They weren't trying to lure me into the woods anymore. They were trying to come inside. And somewhere in the chaos I realized the most terrifying truth hidden in Project Hollowheart's classified files. These things weren't evolving into humans. They were practicing, perfecting, replacing. And they'd chosen me as their pattern. The first breach hit the ventilation ducts like a gunshot, metal shrieking, bolts snapping one by one, as something heavy dragged itself through the narrow aluminum throat above my head. The entire station vibrated with the groaning sound of warped metal, and I staggered backward, boots slipping on the concrete as the ceiling buckled downward in a long, bending arc. I didn't wait for it to give way. I ran, irregular strides, broken rhythm, forcing myself not to fall into any repeating pattern the creatures could map, skidding around the corner into the back corridor where the emergency hatch lay hidden behind a panel we were only supposed to open during evac drills. Behind me, the duct tore open with a wet, tearing explosion and something slithered out. Too long, too segmented, joints popping like knuckles dragged across gravel. I didn't look. The thing laughed as it hit the floor, my laugh, just slightly out of breath, slightly amused, exactly like I sounded when I didn't know someone was recording me. "Marcus," it crooned from the dark. "Wait." I slammed my shoulder into the emergency panel, ripping the latch free, revealing the old maintenance tunnel beneath the floor. Cold air surged upward, smelling of iron, damp soil, and something sweet rotting just beneath the scent. The floor vibrated again, something massive dropping from the roof, maybe 2 stories above, followed by delicate tapping along the wall like antlers brushing drywall while searching for purchase. I dropped into the tunnel without hesitation, boots crunching on gravel as I hit the slope and tumbled forward, scraping my palms raw. Above me, something leaned over the hatch. I heard it sniff, slow, wet, searching the air like it was reading my breath. "Ma-ku." The creature gurgled, jaw distending, voice glitching as it tried to refine the consonants. I crawled faster, hunched low, ducking under hanging cables, trying to move without rhythm. The tunnel stretched ahead, 40 meters of dirt walls reinforced with old timber beams. ending at a rusted steel exit hatch buried under the forest floor. My lungs burned, my legs shaking as I pushed myself forward, but halfway down the tunnel a thunderous boom erupted at the station above, followed by distant breaking glass and the unmistakable sound of hooves skittering across tile. They were inside. They were swarming the station, hunting for the open hatch. Hunting for me. My breath hitched when I saw the first distortion in the tunnel gravel, 3 long impressions, like hooves dragging but spaced impossibly far apart, leading deeper into the darkness. They'd been here already. They knew the tunnels. A scraping sound slithered from the pitch-black curve ahead, quiet, subtle, deliberate. A lure. I reached the end of the tunnel in a full sprint, practically throwing myself against the exit hatch wheel. It resisted at first, frozen by years of rust, then groaned violently as I threw my entire weight into it, arms screaming, body shaking with panic. Behind me, something scuttled across the gravel fast. Too fast. The sound of joints bending wrong echoed through the tunnel, growing closer, accompanied by a low, almost disappointed laugh. My laugh. The hatch wheel spun free. I shoved upward and bright cold night air blasted down into the tunnel, flooding my face with freezing wind and pine needles. I scrambled out, boots sinking into the thin snow layer covering the forest floor, my hoodie catching on a root as I tumbled forward. The tunnel hatch slammed closed behind me, and immediately something crashed against it from below, rattling the locks, denting the metal outward like a face pressing against elastic. I choked on a breath and bolted into the trees, zigzagging between trunks, refusing to fall into a predictable gate. The moonlight filtered through the canopy in thin silver ribbons, distorting shadows into long vertical shapes that looked too much like the creatures hunting me. Branches whipped my arms. My breath turned to steam. Somewhere far behind, an echoing shriek crackled through the forest, a deer call broken in half, stretched into a human scream. Then another, closer. I veered left, boots tearing through underbrush, heading for the only place I knew had a chance of elevation and visibility. The old fire tower deeper in the woods, a rotting skeleton of timber and rusted steel the county never bothered to dismantle. If I could climb it before they reached me, if the stairs held, I might get a radio signal out, might get help. Might survive. A sharp snap behind me made me whirl, a silhouette lurching between trees, upright, tall, wrong, antlers scraping bark as it moved with smooth gliding motions. Its head twitched in abrupt increments like a puppet resetting between jerks, and when it leaned forward, its face caught a sliver of moonlight. The jaw was too long, the eyes too empty, the skin around the mouth stretched like a mask pulled too tight. Then it smiled. Wide, wet. Like human lips dragged over teeth that weren't meant for smiling. Another figure stepped beside it. Then another, 3 shapes, all tall, all waiting. They began to walk, no, glide forward in perfect synchronization, every step mirrored, every tilt of the head identical, every breath a copied rhythm they must have learned from watching me on the station feeds. I snapped my gaze away, no sustained eye contact, and ran. The forest opened ahead, revealing the tower's black silhouette rising above the tree line like a broken spine. I sprinted up the hill, legs burning, chest splitting with cold air, boots pounding in an inconsistent rhythm to throw them off. My hand slapped the railing. I took the stairs 3 at a time, 1, 4, 2, 5, never repeating a cadence, even as the wood groaned beneath me. Halfway up, something crashed through the underbrush below, and I glanced down just long enough to see a creature leap onto the first steps, limbs bending backward as it lunged forward like a spider wearing a deer's skin. I nearly lost my footing. I pushed harder. The staircase swayed violently. At the top platform, I threw myself against the radio panel, ripping off the rusted cover and slamming every switch I could find. Static screamed through the speaker. Unit anybody, timberline breach, hostile memetics, the words spilled out of me in a frantic rush. This is Marcus Webb, Wildlife Station Tech. Project Hollowheart has breached containment there in the forest there. Something slammed the tower leg below, making the entire structure shudder. I grabbed the railing, knuckles white. They're learning human gait, they mimic voices, they're hunting patterns, the radio hissed, then someone answered. An unfamiliar male voice, urgent, clipped. Webb, hold your position. We have your transmission. Do not descend the tower. Repeat, do not climb down. A heavy impact shook the stairs again, three creatures climbing in staggered, glitching motions, antlers clattering against the railings. They are triangulating your position, the voice continued. Do not let them reach you. Maintain altitude, reinforcements en route. How far? I choked. 7 minutes. I stared down at the creatures already halfway up the stairs. I don't have 7 minutes. Webb, listen. You must disrupt their imitation sequence. Patterns give them power. Predictability lets them close distance. Create as much sensory interference as possible. How? Noise, movement, any disruption you can generate. Do not repeat yourself. Below, one creature tilted its head to a full 90 degrees, bones cracking wetly, eyes wide and glowing. Another climbed over it, limbs folding like origami. A third imitated the movement, perfect and horrifying. They were speeding up, learning, evolving. I staggered to the far end of the tower platform, smashing anything I could find. Old crates, metal canisters, brittle rail slats, kicking debris down the stairs, creating an irregular rain of obstacles that clattered and echoed unpredictably. The creatures paused, confused. Good. The radio hissed again. Webb, keep going, you're interrupting their mimicry loop. They can't synchronize. But the victory was instantly shattered as one creature tilted its head upward and began laughing again. My laugh, but not from its mouth. From somewhere deeper in its chest, amplified through its hollow body like an instrument. The others picked up the laugh, layering it, strengthening it, building it into a sound so unbearably human that my vision blurred with fear. The tower shook. Hard. One creature vaulted the broken section of stairs and landed on the platform, its hooves slamming down inches from me, its head twisting as if trying to fix its face into a smile that belonged to someone real. I swung a broken plank at its skull, shattering part of the mask-like structure it wore, and beneath the crack something moved. Not bone, not muscle, something shifting like black smoke under stretched skin. The creature screamed, staggering back. The others lunged onto the platform. I backed toward the railing, wind whipping my hoodie, heart punching against my ribs. The radio screamed in my ear. Webb, jump now. What? Jump. THEY can't mimic fall patterns. Do it or they take you. The creatures lunged. I climbed the railing. Their arms, if you could call them arms, shot toward me. I jumped. The world flipped. The trees spun. Cold air tore past my face. The ground hit like a hammer. Pain detonated through my side, my vision exploding into white, but I was alive barely. Above me, the creatures shrieked, unable to parse the jump, unable to reconcile the pattern break. For a moment they froze like statues, but only for a moment. Then slowly they began to descend the tower, not climbing, learning how to fall. I staggered to my knees, lungs burning. Reinforcements were close. I could hear engines, shouts, boots, but the creatures were closer. And now they knew how to follow a jump. 6 months have passed since that night in Timberline Forest, but the memory of falling, of that moment suspended between air and earth, between life and something wearing a deer's shape, still shudders through me whenever a branch snaps outside my apartment window. I survived the fall, fractured 2 ribs, dislocated my shoulder, and slammed hard enough into the frozen earth that the world vanished into white noise for a full 10 seconds. But I lived. The creatures didn't understand falling yet, couldn't mimic gravity's randomness. But by the time reinforcements reached the tower, they were already learning, limbs spasming in grotesque, jerking attempts to replicate the uncontrolled descent I'd made instinctively. The team dragged me out of the snow, half-conscious, mumbling warnings about antlers bending like fingers and voices that weren't human. And as they rushed me into the evac truck, I saw one last shape silhouetted at the base of the collapsed tower. Tall, upright, head tilted like it was studying how to break itself into a fall pattern. They sedated me before I could scream. I woke in a federal recovery ward 2 towns away, hooked to monitors that beeped slow and steady, the color of the room too sterile to be comforting, too dim to be safe. A man in a gray uniform, no insignia, no name tag, asked me questions for hours, most of which weren't really questions at all. Did it imitate your gait? Did it use your exact voice or a degraded version? Did it attempt facial mimicry? I answered everything, forcing my throat through the pain, telling them how the creatures studied me through glass, how they learned my steps, how they practiced my laugh until it fit their new anatomy. When I told them about Project Hollowheart files appearing on the monitors, the man stopped writing. When I told them about Holcomb's last call, distorted, shifting into my own voice, he closed the folder slowly. When I asked if Holcomb survived, the man didn't speak. He just stood, nodded once, and left the room. Over the next week, agents came and went, their questions circling the same points: how close the creatures came, how long they watched me, how many times I made eye contact. They scanned me with devices that hummed like tuning forks, checked my hearing, my reflexes, my balance, as if expecting I'd picked up some of their mimicry. No one told me what happened to the station. They said it was contained. They said breach neutralized. They said Hollowheart assets have been relocated. Lies wrapped in protocol. After 12 days, they released me to a motel under continued observation. After 20 days, they told me I could leave the region entirely. By day 30, they stopped returning my calls. I moved 3 states away, settling in a small apartment on the edge of a bland city where the only wildlife is pigeons and stray cats, animals that don't walk like men in the dark. I took a job repairing communications equipment for a trucking company, something quiet, practical, solitary. I don't go near forests anymore. Don't go near wildlife preserves, wooded hiking trails, or anything with antlers mounted on the walls. But despite all the distance I put between myself and that forest, something followed. It started subtle, my reflection in a dark window moving a half-second out of sync, my footsteps echoing wrong in stairwells, pigeons turning their heads a little too humanly as I passed. I told myself it was trauma, overactive nerves, the echo of something I barely escaped. Then the emergency alerts started again. Not official ones, those don't reach me anymore. I unsubscribed, blocked every automated government sender I could, but these weren't on any network. They arrive at 2:14 a.m. every night, pure white screen. No banner, no agency, just a single line: do not follow the deer. The first time it appeared, I almost convinced myself it was a glitch, some leftover signal from the timberline systems. But then I remembered, there are no deer in this city. No forests, nothing with hooves for miles. And yet the next night the message came again: do not look at the antlers. Sometimes the alerts appear on my laptop instead, replacing whatever I'm typing with warnings written in the exact formatting of the Hollowheart documents I wasn't supposed to see. Sometimes the messages appear on my TV when it's not even powered on. But the worst part isn't the alerts, it's the footsteps. Every night between 2 and 3 a.m. something walks past my apartment door, soft at first, a slow, testing shuffle, then a second sound: hooves, but not on hardwood, not on carpet, on something softer, something like skin. The rhythm is wrong, too spaced apart, too heavy, too deliberate. The same broken stride the creatures used when they first learned to stand upright. My neighbor, a trucker who leaves for work before dawn, asked me last month why I stand motionless in my living room window at exactly 2:30 a.m. every few nights. I told him I don't. He didn't believe me. He said he sees me clearly: hoodie, jeans, still as a tree trunk, facing the parking lot, but I don't remember standing there. The man in gray uniforms visited once more a few weeks ago, knocking on my door without introducing himself. He just looked at me, really looked, and asked, "Mr. Webb, have you noticed any imitations in your daily routine?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I realized answering would give them another sample of my voice. Another pattern, another thing for them to practice. The man left, and I haven't seen him again. I sleep with every light on. I keep my boots beside the bed. I move in irregular patterns around the apartment. No repeated steps, no predictable pacing, no fixed routines. Because something passes my door at night. Something tall. Something that breathes like it has no lungs. Something that sometimes stops outside my apartment and gently, so gently, taps the bottom of the door with a single hoof. 3 taps, always 3. Practicing a rhythm it learned 6 months ago. Last night, for the first time, something whispered my name through the cracks in the wall in a voice I knew instantly. Mine, but calmer, steadier, more confident. "Marcus, open the door." I didn't move, couldn't, and then I heard a second voice, another version of me. Then a third, all whispering, all rehearsing, all improving. They're close now. They're better at walking, better at speaking, better at wearing the shapes they study. And I think God helped me. I think one of them finally learned how to fall the right way. Because 2 nights ago, someone knocked on my window from the second floor. A perfect human knock. And when I looked through the blinds, I saw a tall silhouette standing on 2 legs. A silhouette with antlers bending like fingers toward the glass. Its head tilted, observing, learning, smiling. The emergency alert came again in that instant, flashing violently across every screen in my apartment. This time the message contained only 2 words, too late. And now, as I finish writing this, I hear the familiar sound outside my door. 3 slow taps, a breath. Then my own voice whispering from the other side. I learned your walk.